There is a scene in a 1989 movie about baseball where a grown man in his 30s asks his dead father if he wants to have a catch. That's the line. "Hey, Dad."
You want to have a catch?
The father, who has been dead for years, smiles and says yes. They throw a baseball back and forth in the Iowa twilight. That's it. That's the ending of the movie. I want you to think about something. Field of Dreams was not marketed as a film about grief. It was marketed as a fantasy baseball movie. The poster showed a cornfield and a glowing diamond. Critics called it whimsical. It was rated PG, and millions of grown men watched the ending in 1989 and quietly fell apart. Because what the film was actually about, what it had been about the whole time, was a son who never got to say what he needed to say to his father, and the universe gave him one more chance. This is a video about the fathers we watched on screen, the ones who taught us, before we knew we were being taught, what a father was supposed to be, what a man was supposed to be, how love between a parent and a child was supposed to look, and what it looked like when that love went wrong. We absorbed those scenes when we were 8, 12, 15 years old. They lodged somewhere deep, and then, decades later, we became fathers ourselves, or we didn't. Or we tried to forgive the ones we had, or we couldn't. And we've been carrying movie fathers around the whole time. Let me show you what I mean. There's a scene in Mrs. Doubtfire, a movie marketed as a Robin Williams comedy, where a father sits in his car after losing custody of his children. He is not making jokes. He is not in costume. He is alone, in the front seat, staring forward, holding the steering wheel like it's the only thing keeping him upright. The film cut from this scene to its next musical montage in about 8 seconds. We were not asked to dwell, but children dwelled. A generation of kids whose parents were divorcing, and that was a lot of us statistically, saw that scene and understood, before we had any vocabulary for it, that there was a kind of pain a father could feel that he was not allowed to show his children. That divorce, for the parent who left or was sent away, was not the relief the lawyers had described. It was something much worse. The film, technically, was a comedy. The film, actually, was a documentary about what it was costing fathers in America to lose access to their kids in 1993. A lot of us watched Mrs. Doubtfire on VHS multiple times, on the couch, with one parent who no longer lived with the other. We thought we were watching a funny man in a dress. We were watching, also, a slow education in what our own fathers might have been carrying, silently in cars after dropping us off, that we would not understand until we were 30. There's a scene in The Pursuit of Happiness where a father and his small son spend the night in a public bathroom because they have nowhere else to go. The father is holding the door shut with his foot. Someone is knocking hard. His son has fallen asleep on his lap. And the father, he's just looking at the ceiling, trying not to make a sound, because if his son wakes up, his son will know. The film is based on a true story. The man, Chris Gardner, was real. The bathroom was real. And the central, devastating engine of the movie is this. The father's only goal in every scene is to make sure his son does not realize how bad things are. He smiles when he is terrified. He plays games when he is panicking. He pretends the homeless shelter is an adventure. He sells his blood for money and tells his son he was at work. I want to say this carefully because I don't think we say it enough. A lot of fathers we know, our own, our friends, the ones we became, have spent years performing okays for the children in their care. You can call it strength. You can call it pride. You can call it stoicism. The film calls it love. The Pursuit of Happiness was not a children's movie, but a lot of children watched it anyway, with their parents, on a Sunday afternoon, and we were watching the kind of effort our own fathers might have been making, that we would only recognize once we became the ones holding the bathroom door. There is a scene in Big Fish where a son who has spent his life resenting his father's tall tales finally tells his dying father a tall tale of his own. The father is in a hospital bed. He has been dying. He has been a frustration to his son for the entire film. The son is a journalist. He believes in facts. He has spent his whole life trying to figure out who his father actually was beneath all the stories. And in the final scene, he realizes the only thing his father needs from him is one more story. So he tells him one. The film ends with the line, "A man tells a story over and over until he becomes the story. In that way, he becomes immortal." And the camera pulls back, and the father is gone. I want you to think about what this film was teaching. A lot of us grew up with fathers who were not fully knowable, who told stories that didn't quite add up, who had whole lives before us that we were never given access to, who deflected our questions with jokes, with redirections, with things we found frustrating until they were gone. Big Fish is, very quietly, a film about giving up the demand to know your father and accepting that maybe loving him is more important than understanding him. That's a hard lesson. The film delivers it with a smile, but it's still hard. A generation of us watched it 20 years ago and put it away in the back of our minds. I want to talk about a fish. In 2003, Pixar made a film about a clownfish named Marlin who crosses an entire ocean to find his son. That's the plot. That's the whole plot. The film opens with Marlin's wife being killed and almost all of his unborn children being killed in the same attack. Only one egg survives, and Marlin makes a promise to that egg. "I promise, I will never let anything happen to you." That promise is, of course, impossible. Things happen. Nemo gets taken. The whole rest of the film is Marlin learning that the promise he made to keep his son perfectly safe was a promise no parent has ever been able to keep. But here's what he can do. He can show up. He can cross an ocean. He can fight sharks. He can survive being swallowed by a whale. He can do all the things a small, anxious, frightened fish has no business doing because somewhere out there, his son needs him. When Nemo sees his father through the window of a strange building in Sydney Harbor, when he realizes that his dad, this small, frightened fish from the reef, came all this way, that's the thing the film was teaching, without ever announcing it. That love between a parent and a child isn't really about being strong. It isn't about keeping your promises. It isn't about always knowing what to do. It's just about showing up, crossing the ocean, whatever your ocean is. I want to step back now. Every one of those films came out when most of you watching this were children or teenagers or young adults trying to figure out who you were going to be. We watched them with our own dads. We watched them alone. We watched them 20 years later with our own children, and felt something we couldn't quite name. And somewhere in there, those movie fathers became part of us. When you became a father, or imagined becoming one, you measured yourself against them. When you tried to understand your own father, you measured him against them. When something went wrong between you and the man who raised you, or the man you became, there was somewhere in the back of your mind a film, a scene, a version of how it was supposed to look. A man on a baseball field, asking for a catch. A man in a car, trying not to break. A man holding a bathroom door, performing okay for the small person on his lap. A man at a riverside, finally listening to a story. A small fish, crossing the ocean because his son needed him. Those weren't real men. They were performances, scripts, frames of light on a screen, but they were also, for a generation of us, the most coherent picture of fatherhood we had. Most of our real fathers couldn't articulate themselves the way movie fathers could. Most of our real fathers didn't get a perfect closing scene. Most of our real fathers, and most of us, when we became fathers ourselves, fumbled through it, did some of it right, did a lot of it wrong, and hoped our kids would forgive us for the parts we couldn't figure out. The movies couldn't give us better fathers. They could only give us a vocabulary for the ones we had. There's a reason the ending of Field of Dreams still works on grown men 35 years later. It's not the baseball, it's that somewhere in there. We all have a question we never asked our father, a conversation we never had, a version of the man we wish we could meet, if only for a day. The film gave us, for 2 minutes, what life never gives anyone. A second chance, with a father who isn't there anymore. We watched it as kids, and didn't fully understand why our parents were crying. We watch it now, and we understand exactly. That's the gift those movies gave us. They weren't just stories about fathers. They were rehearsals for a grief most of us hadn't experienced yet, and a kind of love we hadn't yet learned how to give. There's a scene with a father that lives in your head. You know the one. Put it in the comments. Just the film. Just the scene. Someone scrolling is going to find the same one you wrote. That's the catch.